Okay, the next item of business is an urgent question, and I call Tess White.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the decision of the Employment Tribunal of Sandy Peggy versus NHS Fife Health Board.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, we note the judgment in this very complex case. Individual decisions by the Board in relation to employment matters are a matter for the Board, but as a government we will be considering the judgment very carefully for any issues that require wider consideration. This government has and will continue to call for a respectful, compassionate debate on gender issues, recognising the need for respect and dignity for all involved. These matters need to be carefully considered, openly and thoughtfully, and respectful debate among people with differing opinions should always be possible. This is the only way we will make progress. My focus is to ensure that NHS Fife, alongside other boards, provides an effective health service to the populations they serve across Scotland, and I will continue to do so.
Tess White.
The NHS Fife was found to have harassed a nurse of 30 years just for standing up for her rights to privacy and dignity. Her sex-based rights under the Equality Act 2010 were not protected. Too many female nurses are operating in a climate of fear in a two-class system. NHS boards are allowing trans activists to push their illegal and harmful self-ID agenda and fuel a toxic and harmful culture. The Cabinet Secretary talks about different opinions, but what about nurses who are being told to be nice, when nice means subjugating their rights to privacy, dignity and safety? Activism has no place in hospitals where the #1 priority should be safeguarding. Cabinet Secretary, what are you going to do to keep all women safe in hospitals, protect their sex-based rights and eradicate this climate of fear, harassment and bullying?
Through the Chair, Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I've been very clear since coming to office, and I believe my predecessors have as well, on the importance of dignity and respect of all people in employment in the health service. I'll say again, our health system is based on the core values of care, compassion, openness, honesty, dignity and respect for everyone, irrespective of their individual identities. This is an incredibly complex case. It's a very lengthy judgment, and so we will take care and time to reflect upon it, as I would urge all colleagues to do.
Tess White.
Secretary, what about the care and compassion
Through
for
the Chair, Ms White.
Presiding Officer, what about the care and compassion for female nurses? The floodgates have opened. The judgment is the thin end of the wedge for employment tribunal cases and settlements. Millions of hard-earned taxpayer money is being paid by the Scottish Government to fuel organisations like Engender, LGBT Youth Scotland, Stonewall, Scottish Trans Alliance, allowing them to go rogue, unchecked, and many push their illegal propaganda, influencing training materials, guidelines and policy in hospitals and the wider public sector. In the procurement policies, NHS boards do not award contracts to organisations who do not abide by the law. So why is this any different? Cabinet Secretary, will you personally oversee... Presiding Officer, will the Cabinet Secretary personally oversee a review of the policies and guidelines being influenced by these organisations before those organisations come up for financial renewal next year?
Cabinet Secretary.
Or will you, under your watch, allow...
Cabinet Secretary. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I think we're going slightly beyond the tribunal. And just to provide some context around the tribunal, that is still to remedy. There are 14 days for people involved in the tribunal to have an opportunity to appeal. So I think it's important that we allow that process to take its course, and we respect that process and the wider considerations of ensuring that everybody is able to both speak up and to be able to access health services and deliver health services with respect and compassion has already been answered by me in terms of my previous question.
Thank you. I've got a number of colleagues who wish to ask supplementaries. I hope to get all of them in. They'll need to be slightly briefer by way of questions. I call first Jackie Bailey.
The ruling in the Sandy Peggy case leaves significant questions for both NHS Fife and the Scottish Government to answer. Now, the Scottish Government has written to health boards in early September about the Supreme Court judgment, but leaves it as a matter for individual boards to consider following their own legal advice. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, surely we should have one consistent approach across Scotland where the legal advice for boards is the same, where a woman does not need to first complain to have her employer follow the law, or is it the case that the Scottish Government expect individual frontline staff to be their own experts on human rights law?
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, the Scottish Government accepts the Supreme Court ruling. We accept that judgment. We're taking forward the detailed work that is necessary as a consequence. A working group that has been established and convened by the Permanent Secretary has been actively considering the implications of the judgment across every key area of government, and as a result of this work, action has already been taken, including updated guidance for the gender representation on public boards, Scotland Act 2018, and amendment to the Public Appointments Recruitment Process for regulated public bodies through which the Act is applied. So action has been taken.
Sharon Dowie, to be followed by Patrick Harvey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This case is a prime example of the SNP's flawed self-ID guidance gone wrong. It's now been nearly 8 months since the Supreme Court ruled that the definition of sex in terms of equalities legislation is based in biology, and yet public bodies under the direction of the Scottish Government have still not implemented the judgment. Will the Scottish Government finally commit to ensuring that all public bodies are now following the judgment?
Cabinet Secretary.
I've already said in answer to Jackie Bailey the Government's position in terms of the Supreme Court. Again, I provide context in terms of where we are with this tribunal ruling. The tribunal is still to remedy. That remedy hearing is still to take place. There are 14 days for those involved in the tribunal to appeal. So I think I would urge caution on all of us rushing to judgment in this while the process is still underway.
Patrick Harvey, to be followed by Murdo Fraser.
Despite the valiant attempts of anti-trans campaigners to claim a win on this issue, the tribunal in fact found that Ms Peggy's own behaviour amounted to harassment of Dr Upton, and it dismissed the vast majority of her claims. Most importantly, it is the second Scottish Employment Tribunal in a month to find that employers are not, in fact, required to operate the kind of trans segregation policies which anti-equality groups are pushing for. So does the Scottish Government agree that the blanket exclusion of trans people from facilities that they need at work is generally unlawful, and will it therefore make clear to all public bodies in Scotland that segregation of trans people is not supported in law and that their human rights will be defended against the current onslaught?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. As I said, we're still working through and will consider carefully the tribunal ruling and its implication not just for the health service but for the wider public bodies as employers, and ensuring, as I said in response to previous questions, that our health system is based on the core values of care, compassion, openness, honesty, integrity and respect for everyone, irrespective of their individual identities. There are 4 areas that were upheld by the tribunal which need to be taken seriously, and I'll be corresponding with NHS Fife in order to hear how they intend to respond to those.
Murdo Fraser, to be followed by Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The conduct of the senior management of NHS Fife throughout this entire episode has been disgraceful. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money spent defending the indefensible in legal fees. More money spent on media management. The character of Sandy Peggy, a nurse with a 30-year unblemished record, traduced in court. A bizarre media statement issued attacking Sandy Peggy's legal team, which later had to be withdrawn and which we now know was instructed personally by the Chief Executive. Carol Potter, as Chief Executive of NHS Fife, has lost the confidence of the people of Fife, does not deserve to continue in that role, should not be allowed to retire next year on a healthy pension. Will the Health Secretary now sack her and remove her from a job she is not fit to do?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding officer, the tribunal is still to remedy. The parties involved still have 14 days to appeal the decision. I do note that 4 of the 47 claims were upheld, and it's important that serious consideration is given by Fife to those 4 areas of 47 that were upheld. I'll be corresponding with Fife in order to hear their response to how they will respond to those claims being upheld.
Emma Roddick, to be followed by Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Everybody, regardless of their protected characteristics under the Equality Act, has the right to feel safe at work and free from harassment. Organisations like Engender do incredible work using their vast experience to contribute to debates and promote and protect women's rights. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that we must listen to them when they do so?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Emma Roddick for her question. I've already set out that I expect from a health service perspective a culture of openness and transparency and support for patients and members of staff to be able to interact and to go about their business, whether that is seeking to get access to services or indeed to be delivering them. I expect that, irrespective of people's individual identities, and of course it is open for anyone to be able to bring forward concerns at any point and to be able to ensure that that is properly remedied and for those organisations to support people in doing so.
Douglas Ross, to be followed by Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Shamefully, during the tribunal, the Cabinet Secretary expressed confidence in the senior leadership of NHS Fife. Now he must have come to the conclusion that most of us reached months ago, that they do not deserve that confidence. So can I ask him, if the current Chief Executive does not do the right thing and resign immediately, will he do the right thing and sack her?
Cabinet Secretary.
I've already said in response to the question from Murdo Fraser that the tribunal still has a course to run, which includes the conclusion of the remedy, and all parties involved have 14 days within which to appeal. So I think it's important that those issues that have been raised around the 4 of 47 claims that were upheld are responded to. That's why I'll be corresponding with NHS Fife in order to get their response. But otherwise, I think it's important we take the time to reflect on the judgment, the complexity that's involved here, and we will certainly be doing that in government.
Ash Regan, to be followed by Rachel Hamill.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Sandy Peggy Employment Tribunal exposes not just one employer's failings, but a systemic collapse in how public bodies understand and uphold women's sex-based rights. And this judgment further exposed how whistleblowers are harassed merely for speaking up for themselves or for others. Women in Scotland should not have to become litigants simply to secure their lawful rights to dignity and safety at work and in public spaces and services. The Supreme Court settled the law. Will the Government now act with urgency to follow the law, as the EHRC advised months ago, and support their public bodies to follow the law and stop this ridiculous waste of taxpayers' money?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, we have been clear since the Supreme Court ruling that we accept its judgment. We are taking forward the detailed work that is necessary as a consequence. We've had sight of the Equality and Human Rights Commission's updated Code of Practice, but it is for UK Government Ministers to publish this, and we await that happening. In terms of the outcome of this tribunal, there are still matters to run its course, including the remedy hearings, and it is open for individuals to appeal this decision. So I think it's important at this stage to take calm reflection of the judgment, which is complex both legally and from a policy perspective, and ensure that we're responding adequately across government.
And Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is clear that the SNP's gender self-ID policy still prevails in spite of the Supreme Court judgment. Sandy Peggy's case proves that the burden to express concerns around safety, privacy and dignity lies directly with women and women only. Women's protections must be guaranteed in the workplace. Will the Cabinet Secretary give biological females the assurance that they can feel safe in all health boards across Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I've made very clear since coming to office, and I continue to work with the likes of the National Whistleblowing Officer and local whistleblowing champions, around the as well as chairs and chief executives of boards, around the culture and the respect that I expect within our boards as employers, regardless of people in their individual identities. I expect everybody to be treated with respect and to be ensure that any concerns that they're raising are properly considered and investigated, regardless of whether it's involving the issues that are concerned with this tribunal or other matters around patient safety.
Thank you. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.